that shows that if there are any bugs, they're going to take their time to go out and fix it. I mean, we saw many, many years ago there was an issue with maps, and since then we haven't seen that. Apple's one of those very interesting companies that takes software and hardware very seriously. You don't really find that in the tech world because Microsoft writes software, but somebody else makes the PCs for them. Android or Google, release the Android operating system, but somebody else makes the hardware for them. Apple's the only company that takes this very seriously. So the delay probably just shows us they're very, keen on making sure it's right.
Anything like how serious are some of these bugs, or is this just the typical I got to upgrade my software or something?
I think it's just a matter of, this is not going to come out for 6 to 9 months in my view. So I'm not concerned about that. The big question for me still is what the hell's going to happen with the iPhone sales in China. I think that really remains the most important question unanswered for us.
Is there a possible pivot? I mean, they get like 19% of their revenue from China, right? I'm guessing most of that is iPhones and not like Macs and iPads. So I keep thinking like India has overtaken China in terms of population growth, and I know that the middle class in India is growing at the pace that China's was when we were all awed by it. So maybe they can just sell more products there.
So right now, China is over 10 times bigger than India. So it's a very difficult way to do it overnight.
In terms of revenue.
It's over 10 times, easily. Yeah. When you look at India's smartphone market, it's large, it's very large, but the expensive section of it, it's 95% of the phones are below $300. Apple doesn't even qualify to play in that market. So in that 95%. So India is a very big growth driver for Apple, but in the long run. In the near term, it is China and what's going to happen over there that is going to dictate Apple's growth rate. Is going to be dependent on what's happening in China.
Are they growing everywhere else, like globe x China, at an impressive rate?
No, because US is a mature market. So Western Europe and US are mature markets where, the world is now being divided into high-end Samsung phones and high-end Apple phones. So the big fight is obviously the emerging markets where you see people getting richer. As they get richer, they go for the more affluent brand, which is Apple. So Apple has a very large unpenetrated market in China, in India, in Indonesia, in Brazil, all these markets with high population rate, but it's dependent on the middle class becoming richer.
By the way, is it really brand and not user interface? Because to me, I like Apple, I think, because I feel like it's so easy to live in the ecosystem. I've tried switching to other brands of smartphones and even computers, and it's just not worth it. Like, it's not as easy, and doesn't feel as good as using an Apple product.
So Matt, I'm in the same camp as you, but I can give you, 5 other people who will say the otherwise, take the other side of the argument. So when you look at the loyalty rates, iOS has a much higher loyalty rate, somewhere in the 95% range, somewhere between 90 and 95%, which means only 5 to 7% of people switch in a year. That number is a lot lower on Android. It's about 80% loyalty rate, which means 20% of the people will switch. That really is the big growth driver for Apple, is when you get to a certain point of an Android device, let's say $300, $400, you more likely to switch over to Apple at that point because you can afford to buy an expensive phone. It doesn't happen. If you're buying a $1,500 Samsung device that's Android, you're not switching over to Apple. You're very loyal to that ecosystem.
All right, I know Tim Cook is telling us not to worry about China, but I worry about China. I worry about the Apple products becoming a subject of nationalism, or what's the word you like better, Matt?
Well, I like patriotism.
Patriotism.
Yeah. Nationalism is a kind of a dirty word, right? Nationalism implies not only that you love your own country, but you kind of hate other countries.
Okay, I'll go with that. So patriotism, and now I've got a good, alternative in the Huawei phone. So that, to me, that's if the Apple phone all of a sudden becomes either not cool or not whatever.
But Paul, I'm telling you, I'm a bit surprised about the stock reaction in the last 5 days, because I would have thought that the guidance that they gave for next quarter was so bad that it should have, had an impact on the stock, but it's just done so well. I have no idea how to, reason with that.
That's because Apple has a long history of under-promising and over-delivering.
That
right?
may be the case. And, for their sake, I hope that's true. But China is becoming an area of concern at this point because we are not sure whether the weakness is because of consumer spending or people buying other phones at the expense of iPhone. So I think it's going to take another quarter. When they come out in the holiday season, and the comments from that really is going to dictate how 2024 shapes up for Apple, because numbers have already started to come down for next year's growth rate. If you look at Apple's total sales in 2023, they were down 3% on a reported basis, and they were up 1 percentage points excluding FX related. Right now, before the earnings, we were expecting 6% Apple sales growth next year. It's already come down to around 4%.
Yep.
So expectations are already down. But, to echo Paul's point, if a company is only growing 1%, 2%, 3%, why am I paying a 28 multiple for that? And that remains the biggest question at this point.
And putting out a car isn't really going to... Even if they did that, it's not like they would sell as many as they do the phones. They haven't really made the breakthrough yet with Watch, although it's picked up, right? And the other products, iPad, is there?
So they're all very good products. They're all going to gain market share in their respective categories. But let's say Mac, $30 billion business, even if it grows by 10%, that's $3 billion. I mean, it's not much. Apple's revenue base is closer to $400 billion. So it doesn't move the needle as much as iPhones, which is 52% of total sales.
But what about Watch? Doesn't everyone get an Apple Watch? I mean,
No.
people... Okay, Paul... Okay,
I like
Paul
to tell time with my watch.
Paul has a nice Omega watch, and I like... my wife got me a Rolex for my 50th birthday.
Wow, nice.
Very kind of her. But look, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on a watch because it used to be you did kind of to signal to others that you had this status. Now you can wear an Apple Watch and still be in that, upper echelon.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. An Apple Watch is very good. The AirPods are very good. But all I'm trying to say is these are great categories, but they don't move the needle as much as the iPhone.
All right,
that's just the reality of math.
Right.
All right, here's my reality of math. And when I see Tim Cook at Duke in the next couple of days, I'm going to make this comment to him. $162 billion in cash. I got $120 billion in debt. You got to have $100 billion in free cash flow. Give me a 3 or 4% dividend yield. I'm going to corner
Paul
him
is never going
on
to
the
stop.
campus
This is one of
at
those
Duke
things that Paul's never going to stop.
this
about.
weekend.
It's okay. I mean,
you can do both, Tim. You can do both. You don't have to signal that you're not a growth company because we all know you're not a growth
Will
company
you
anymore.
literally tell him that when you
Yes.
see him?
Yes.
I
And
wonder
have in
what
the
his
past.
response will be. If
Yeah,
he'll just kind of laugh it off.
his
and be
people
like, it's
will,
great
like,
seeing you, Paul.
move.
He's
Yeah.
going to be patient and says, we'll let the board decide.
Yeah. But I mean, I know for tech companies they don't want to, signal. I'm air quoting signal that they're not a growth company anymore. But the reality is, if you look at the numbers, they're not.
I think what they're doing with their buybacks is saying exactly what you're telling me. The problem with putting out a 5% dividend similar to IBM is you can never go back. If things go bad,
True.
you can never
How
go
did
back.
things go bad for Apple?
That's what people thought about IBM 15 years ago.